I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey Patriot Warrior fam, I'm Face, and these are the histories that America forgot. According to Wikipedia, quote, Fort Lipantitlàn was built on the grounds of an old campsite along the west bank of the Nueces River on the Gulf Coast of Texas. The site was first occupied by a nomadic Lipan Apache tribe during their periodic visits. After the Apaches abandoned the area, the campground was often used by missionaries, military units, and traders, making their way between Mexico and the Texas settlements. In 1825 or 1826, Mexican officials constructed a makeshift fort, named Lipantitlàn, after the Lipan Apaches at the campsite. According to Texian John J. Lynn, the fort, quote, was a single embankment of earth, lined within by fence rails to hold the dirt in place, and would have answered tolerably well, perhaps, for a second-rate hog pen, end quote. The embankment was surrounded by a large ditch. Just outside the ditch lay adobe and wooden huts for the officers and their families. Between 80 and 125 soldiers from the 2nd Active Cavalry Company of Tamaulipas were garrisoned at the fort. They collected customs duties and provided protection to San Patricio, a small settlement of Irish and Mexican colonists, approximately 3 miles south. Smaller garrisons were located at Capano Bay and Refugio, with a larger force stationed at Presidio La Bahia and Goliad. In 1835, Federalists in several interior Mexican states revolted against the increasingly centralist reign of Mexican President Antonio López de Santa Anna. The Texians staged a minor revolt against customs duties in June, and wary colonists began forming militias, ostensibly to protect themselves. Fearing that strong measures were needed to quell the unrest, Santa Anna ordered General Martín Perfecto de Cos to lead a large force into Texas. Cos arrived in Texas on September 20th. The Texas Revolution officially began on October 2nd at the Battle of Gonzales. Within days, Texian insurgents seized Presidio La Bahia, located at Goliad. 20 Mexican soldiers escaped and briefly took refuge at Capano and Refugio. Those garrisons soon abandoned their post and joined the larger force at Fort Lipantitlàn. The Mexican soldiers at Lipantitlàn began improving the defenses of their small fort. As the only remaining garrison on the Texas coast, Fort Lipantitlàn was a vital link between the Mexican interior and Béjar, the colonial center of Texas, which housed Cos and the only other force of Mexican troops in Texas. Captain Philip DeMitt assumed command of the Texians at Presidio La Bahia. In a letter to General Stephen F. Austin, dated October 15th, DeMitt proposed an attack on Fort Lipantitlàn, whose capture would, quote, secure the frontier, provide a vital station for defense, create instability among the Centralists, and encourage Mexican Federalists." End quote. Most of the Federalists in San Patricio were afraid of retaliation if they openly defied Santa Anna's centralist policies. They were also reluctant to hold elections for delegates to the consultation, which would decide whether Texans were fighting for the reinstatement of the Constitution of 1824 or for independence from Mexico. Soldiers at Lipantitlàn had also imprisoned two of DeMitt's men, John Williams and John Toole, as they tried to deliver missives to the Federalist leaders in San Patricio on October 10th and 11th. DeMitt hoped to free the men after capturing Fort Lipantitlàn. On October 20th, James Power, one of the Irish empresarios who helped to found San Patricio, learned that the Lipantitlán soldiers had been ordered to retake Presidio La Bahia. 200 cavalry were expected to reinforce the Lipantitlán garrison before the attack, with an additional 200 to 300 soldiers expected later. Although DeMitt forwarded the intelligence to Austin, he was not given authorization to attack. The delay proved costly to Williams and Toole, who were marched to the Mexican interior, beyond the reach of the Texians. According to DeMitt's angry letter to Austin, Toole begged his captors to kill him outright rather than to send him on the march, which he believed would still result in his death. DeMitt concluded, quote, "This news, after the leniency shown to the prisoners taken here, could not fail to create a lively and a strong excitement. The men under my command are clamorous for retaliation." End quote. The furor over the removal of William and Toole likely led DeMitt to take matters into his own hands. On October 31st, he sent a member of his staff, Adjutant Ira Westover, to take 35 men to attack Fort Lipantitlán. A self-appointed advisory committee, John J. Lynn, Major James Kerr, and Power, rode along. The three advisors had been elected to the consultation, but delayed their departure so that they could participate in the fighting. Rather than riding directly southwest to the fort, Westover traveled southeast to Refugio. This alternative route was likely intended to suggest that the expedition was headed to Capano Bay. An unknown number of men joined the expedition in Refugio. Historian Craig Roll believes that the expedition grew by at least 20 men, and historian Bill Groneman estimated that Westover's force numbered 60 to 70 men when it reached San Patricio. Meanwhile, the commander of the garrison at Fort Lipantitlán, Captain Nicolás Rodriguez, received orders to harass the Texians at Presidio La Bahia. On October 31st, as Rodriguez and his men neared Goliad, they learned that a Texian force had left the fort earlier that day. The Mexican soldiers immediately retraced their route. They did not encounter any Texian soldiers during their march and arrived on November 1st, to find the fort unmolested. Uncertain as to what the Texians intended to do, Rodriguez and the bulk of his garrison, almost 80 men, turned back towards Goliad to attempt to intercept the Texians. Between 21 and 27 soldiers, armed with 2 cannon, remained to defend the fort. Rodriguez expected the Texians to take a direct route. His men patrolled the northern approaches to the fort. Westover's men instead approached from the east, eluding the Mexican patrols. 5 miles from San Patricio, Westover received word that Rodriguez was searching for the Texians. He forced the men to increase their pace, and they arrived at San Patricio 30 minutes after sundown on November 3rd. Westover positioned 2 small groups of men to guard the Nueces River crossings, about 70 yards from the fort. As the rest of the Texians prepared for a dawn assault, 2 San Patricio residents wandered into their camp. Westover arrested one of them, James O'Reilly, for, quote, aiding and assisting the enemy, end quote. In exchange for his liberty, O'Reilly offered to persuade the Mexican garrison to surrender. Historians have no records of what methods O'Reilly used, but by 11 p.m. the Mexican soldiers had surrendered, without a shot fired. They were released immediately as long as they promised not to fight again during the Texas Revolution. The Texians captured 2 4-pound cannons, 18 muskets, and 3 to 4 pounds of powder. They also released several Texians who had been held prisoner in the fort. The following day, Texians burned the wooden huts adjacent to the fort and dismantled the embankments. By 3 p.m., they had rounded up 14 horses and were preparing to bring the cannons back to Goliad. In the meantime, Rodriguez had traveled almost all the way to Goliad. Before he reached Presidio La Bahia, one of his spies arrived with news that the Texians had taken Fort Lipantitlàn. Rodriguez and his men, including 10 colonists from San Patricio, marched back toward the fort, arriving about 4 p.m. The Texians used a small canoe to transport men across the Nueces River, and when the Mexican soldiers were sighted, only half of the Texian force had crossed to the east bank of the river. As the Mexican soldiers attacked, the Texians took cover in a grove of trees. The trees prevented the cavalry from approaching, so Rodriguez's men dismounted and attempted to attack from both sides. After 30 minutes of fighting, the Mexicans withdrew, leaving behind 8 horses and several wounded men. The only Texian injured was Lieutenant William Bracken, who had lost 3 fingers. Texian rifleman A.J. Jones later wrote to Fannin that 3 Mexicans had died with 14 wounded, though historian Stephen Hardin believes that 5 Mexicans died with 17 wounded. Jones's letter mentioned that 3 of the wounded were the alcalde, judge, and sheriff of San Patricio. Without draft animals, the Texians had no easy way to transport the artillery. As night approached, a cold rain began to fall, and the men became discouraged. Westover, Kerr, Lynn, and Power agreed to throw the artillery in the river, rather than to continue to struggle with it. The Texians also deposited their cache of captured ammunition and muskets in the river. In their opinion, the supplies were useless. Most Texians spent the night in San Patricio, housed by sympathetic locals. The Mexican troops camped outdoors near the battle site. At dawn, Westover agreed to allow the wounded Mexican soldiers to be transported to San Patricio for treatment. The following day, one of the wounded soldiers, Mexican Lieutenant Marcelino Garcia, died. Garcia was a personal friend of Lynn, and the Texians gave him a full burial, with honors. Westover sent a message to Rodriguez to request, quote, another pleasant meeting, end quote. Rodriguez declined the offer and retreated with his remaining men to Matamoros. Their departure left only one remaining group of Mexican soldiers in Texas, those under General Cos at Béjar. The Texians now controlled the Gulf Coast, and so all communication between Cos and the Mexican interior must be transferred over land. The long distance involved severely slowed the delivery of messages and receipt of supplies and reinforcements. According to Groneman, this likely contributed to Cos's defeat in the siege of Béjar, which expelled the remaining Mexican soldiers from Texas. On their return to Goliad, Westover's group encountered Agustin Viesca, the recently deposed governor of Coahuila y Texas. Several months before, Viesca had been imprisoned by the Mexican army for defying attempts by Santa Anna to disband the state legislature. He and members of his cabinet had been liberated by sympathetic soldiers and immediately traveled to Texas to recreate the state government. Westover and his men provided a military escort to Goliad, arriving on November 12th. DeMitt welcomed Viesca but refused to recognize his authority as governor. This caused an uproar in the garrison. Many supported the governor, while others believed that Texas should be an independent country and should therefore not recognize the Mexican governor. DeMitt later chastised Westover for not following orders during the expedition. Westover refused to make an official report to DeMitt. Instead, he sent a written report to Sam Houston, the commander-in-chief of the regular army. In Westover's opinion, quote, the men all fought bravely, and those on the opposite bank of the river were enabled to operate on the flanks of the enemy above and below the crossing, which they did with fine effect, end quote. Houston lauded, quote, the conduct and bravery of the officers and men who have so handsomely acquitted themselves in the affair, and so deservedly won reputation for themselves and glory for their country, end quote. This was the first armed skirmish fought since the Battle of Goliad. According to historian Hobart Hewson, the victory, quote, renewed the morale of the people, end quote. News of the battle spread throughout the United States, and the Texians were widely praised in American newspapers. The removal of Mexican army oversight encouraged Federalists in San Patricio. These men soon gained control of the municipal government. formed a militia and elected delegates to represent them at the consultation. However, the town remained divided. Many still supported the centralist Mexican government. After reaching Matamoros, Rodriguez sent a letter to the town leaders. The letter warned that the Mexican army would return and encouraged the people of San Patricio to repudiate the rebellion. One of the San Patricio Federalists later wrote Demit, quote, "We have neither men nor means to withstand any force that may be sent against us," end quote. The Texians chose not to garrison men in or near San Patricio. In 1836, as part of Santa Anna's invasion of Texas, General José de Urrea led Mexican forces along the Texas coastline and retook San Patricio on February 27th. In 1937, the land comprising the former site of Fort Lipantitlàn was donated to the state of Texas. The Texas State Parks Board gained control over the site in 1949. Now named the Lipantitlàn State Historic Site, the park covers 5 acres in Nueces County. A stone marker indicates the location of the former fort.
You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough. There's a million other people with the same stuff. You really think you're different? Man, you must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible, it's not probable, you're irresponsible. Too many obstacles, you gotta stop it, yo. You gotta take it slow, you can't be a pro. Don't waste your time no more. Who the fuck are you to tell me what to do? I don't give a damn if you say you disapprove. I'm gonna make my move, I'm gonna make it soon. And I'll do it cause it's what I wanna fucking do. Cause all these opinions and all these positions, they come in millions, they blocking your vision. But no, you can't listen, that shit is all fiction. Cause you hold the power as long as you're driven.
There's no way that you make it. And maybe you could fake it, but you're never gonna make it. Are you just gonna take that? Make them take it all back. Don't tell me you believe that. Are you just gonna take that? Or will you fucking fight back? Fight back. You ain't gonna make it, you ain't never ever gonna break it. You can never beat them and they're better than you face it. Thinking that they give a damn, you're not thinking straight, kid. No, they don't give a damn, you got what I'm saying? I'm not fucking playing, I'll give it to you straight, man. There's too many others and you're not that great, man. Stop what you're saying, stop what you're making. Everybody here knows that you just faking. Nah, I don't wanna hear it anymore, I don't wanna hear it anymore. All these fucking thoughts, they are not what I need anymore. I'm about to shut the motherfucking door on all you poor ass haters with your heads in the clouds, talking out loud so proud. You better shut your goddamn mouth before I do more speak out. It's about to head south. Never gonna make it. There's no way that you make it. And maybe you could fake it, but you're never gonna make it. Are you just gonna take that? Make them take it all back. Don't tell me you believe that. Are you just gonna take that? Or will you fucking fight back? Fight back.
Yeah.